In this Lies of P Overture review, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the latest Shadow Drop DLC for Lies of P. I've been pretty hyped for this launch ever since it was announced 3 months ago, and was pleasantly surprised when they released it a full month before summer, their expected release window. So does this DLC live up to the grandeur of the original Belle Epoque Souls-like? Watch on to find out. In Lies of P Overture, you continue playing as P in the world of Krat, except now transported back in time to before all the base game events, and before the puppet frenzy threw the city into ruins. This means that you'll be meeting people and visiting areas that were lost or horrific untold events that prelude the frenzy, which were hinted and teased at in the base game, and when I say teased, I mean very subtle dialogues and lore excerpts in notes you pick up, which superfans have been deciphering for ages. As such, I highly recommend replaying Lies of P, or at least watching a lore recap video to refresh yourself on the story and setting before playing this DLC. There is a surprising amount of world building that is told indirectly behind the scenes, which constructs a full narrative behind various organizations like the Alchemists or Stalkers, as well as other important people who take huge precedence in this DLC. As someone who did some theorizing with our Overture trailer analysis video a few months ago, that prior knowledge really elevated my experience with the world and setting to new levels, as I found myself having multiple satisfying moments when the DLC confirmed theories to those burning questions we've had for almost 2 years. When it comes to the plot itself, the storytelling in Lies of P Overture actually manages to outshine the base game, which was already very solid. To give a brief rundown from the Steam blurb, on the brink of the Puppet Frenzy massacre, you follow a legendary stalker, a mysterious guide through untold stories and chilling secrets. The legendary stalker is a character who's been mentioned scarcely within the base game as an incredibly important character within the history of Krat, with this DLC being focused on her story where you tag along. And it's nothing short of absolutely incredible, building up to a finale that manages to pull some heartstrings, even if you did know how it was ultimately going to end. The prior knowledge you have of the characters and events involved is a huge factor in how much you'll enjoy it, but overall they're well written, demonstrating a range of reactions and motivations in response to the Alchemist's atrocities. 90% of the time when I picked up a letter, newspaper, book, or any other lore item, the contents within would unfold some mysteries, answer questions I didn't know I had, or completely change the way I viewed certain characters, even those from the base game. It's incredibly hard to strike that balance between how much of a story or world should be left cryptic in these types of Souls-like games, but I think Lies of P has achieved that balance with this DLC. Even aside from the main story, the side quest storytelling has also gone up a notch. There are multiple tightly knit short story side quests within the DLC, of which every single one hits some emotional chord. There was not one boring side quest that I glossed over, and I generally wanted to know what happened to characters involved or how their stories were going to turn out. The time travel part is sometimes utilized in these side quests as well, with events appearing in the present timeline after you change the events of the past, which I found interesting. For example, you can go back to the present time to a specific character with an outfit equipped to get unique dialogue, or an NPC may suddenly appear after finishing their quest in the past. I only have one very mild nitpick about the story, and it's Gemini's new dialogue. I don't know if I had a rose-tinted view of the base game, but I don't remember his dialogue being as irritating as it was in the DLC. It was a bit of a pain to listen to him recap events which we just saw or state the incredibly obvious, and it felt like a little kick in the shin on the viewer's intelligence every time he did. However, it really wasn't enough to bog down the overall fantastic story, and he only had these moments sparingly. Besides that, he was still a fun companion to have. Overall, the story was absolutely the highlight of the DLC and a huge payoff for Lies of P fans who paid close attention to the world building and the story of Geppetto, Carlo, Simon Manus, and all other important characters. Though it is a bit short, it's tightly knit to have all important key events and manages to outshine most stories in games from recent years. Moving on to the gameplay, unlike the story, Lies of P Overture delivers more of the same with no new mechanics to boast or major gameplay changes which elevate the experience. When it comes to new content to bag in your inventory, the DLC delivers a modest amount which will be just satisfactory to most people. Namely 10 weapons, 8 new music discs, 2 new Legion arms, 7 gestures, and 15 new outfits. Starting with the weapons, the 10 new weapons are a fun addition to the game with new Fable arts and gimmicks which make them much more special than your average weapon from the base game. To name just a few early, the Royal Horn Bow was a highlight at first and the only bow weapon. I carried this in my offhand for the whole game, because it came in quite handy in levels with high-up enemies and had a killer single-target Fable art. Another example would be the Puppet of the Future's Welder Blade, which doubled as both a lance for heavy attacks and a little flamethrower for light ones. A weapon I actually used for most of the game was the Maniac's Pinwheel, a classic pizza cutter weapon that revs up when you dodge or sprint. You can expect similar creativity with other weapons that you'll find in the DLC as well. The new Legion arms were also quite fun, with a new shotgun that I used for practically my entire playthrough, which felt awesome to use. The rest of the new content though, such as music discs, gestures, and outfits, didn't quite interest me, though I'll talk more about the music later. But there were a few outfits which I thought looked awesome to play in, and they were all welcome additions to P's wardrobe. In terms of the level design, Overture is much the same as it was in the base game, if not a little more linear. It's taken a tiny step down in terms of exploration, with content being hard to miss in exactly one instance where I had to debate which direction to go. Some of the levels show off great environments, with the ruined zoo and carnival early into the game and an amazing ice area which I won't spoil. The circus in particular was a pretty fun gimmick level with various minigames and prizes you could acquire throughout, serving as a nice introduction back into the game. But there really was much more to be desired from the levels overall, as even the base game had a mediocre level design format, and to go a tiny step down from that is a little disappointing. Enemy-wise, unfortunately, after the first zoo area, it feels like the enemy variety just stops. In that area, we got mutant carcass gorillas, roly kangaroos that beat the crap out of you unexpectedly, and an elephant which transforms into a grotesque Lovecraftian dinosaur midway through its health bar. Future areas would have some standout enemies as elites, but reuse many base game enemies for fodder. In terms of bosses, there were a few standouts. There were 3 that I found great, the second and third and second to last boss, with the rest being quite forgettable. However, the final boss is absolutely fantastic, beautifully meshing together lore, artistic design, and combat design for a very satisfying finish to the DLC. To summarize my thoughts on the gameplay of the DLC, it's more or less the same as Lies of P, which to be fair is one of the biggest compliments you can get. It's a small step down in terms of level design and only has a few engaging boss fights, but the only other nitpick I could give it is that it doesn't add too much to the base game formula and rehashes much of what we already had. The new content that was added is fun to discover, adds some new build variety, and is good enough to feel fresh though. Graphically, Lies of P is still a polished product, nailing both art style and visual fidelity. Unlike the pre-launch review copy of the game from 2023, I did not have a single crash this time around, and the optimization is still exactly the same, with a solid 200 FPS at 1440p on the best quality settings on a 3090. The art style has been touched up a notch for new attacks and moves with the final boss and its subsequent weapon, as well as in character design. The world of Lies of P has always looked amazing, and this DLC has not changed that at all. When it comes to audio, you can expect stellar voice acting, especially from Joseph Balderrama, and the new music discs yet again knock it out of the park, just like the base game. My personal standouts are Lycerim and Nightmare, but honestly, the entire new soundtrack is a must-listen for anyone who's craving more of the Belle Epoque styles Lies of P has. As you may have already heard, this DLC is shockingly short. My playthrough after 100% of the game only took around 13 hours on the Legendary Stalker difficulty with no summons. At a steep price point of $30, that does call into question whether this DLC is actually worth it when expansions such as Shadow of the Erdtree adds 5 times the content for only $10 more, or DLCs such as the Ringed City for Dark Souls 3 are 9 hours long, with more added content and cost half the price. However, there are a few extras in this DLC that make the steep price point make a little more sense. Although there aren't multiple endings, you can try out other dialogue options within the story, as well as try to find secrets such as hidden lore dialogues for NPCs when wearing certain outfits, or changes in the base game as a result of the actions in the DLC. You'll also be able to try out all 10 weapons in NG+, with the final one being amazing. And by far the biggest factor for replayability is the brand new boss rush mode, which comes with a free update to Lies of P, and is absolutely a plus for being able to refight the new DLC bosses. Given these factors, I would debate that the price point of $30 is barely in line with what you get. It's not a fantastic price, but there is currently a bundle for the full game and DLC for 33% off, and you can always wait for a sale if this is too steep for you. Final thoughts. Funnily enough, I ended up giving this DLC the exact same score we gave the base game, but now for different reasons. Overall, my shortest summary of my thoughts for Lies of P Overture is that this was very much a lore DLC. The story you get from the foundations built in the base game absolutely pays off, and though it is slightly short, it still manages to deliver an exceptional story and a tightly wrapped DLC. I'm not sure exactly how much ergo the writers snorted, but they delivered their A game, and it makes me very excited to see what's coming with Lies of P 2 in the future, especially with their Django twist and Dorothy from Wizard of Oz. While some gameplay elements have degraded since the base game, much of it is simply the same, which again is a huge compliment. The amount of new content added is satisfactory and quite fun to mess around with, and yet again I'm falling in love with the soundtrack and voice acting. NEWS has yet again proven to be arguably the top contender to From Software in the Souls-like market, and I'll be eagerly awaiting with the rest of you for Lies of P 2.